I told you this is a criminal investigation.
We own this property. I gave you my ID. Check the job box. Our names are on it.
You don't tell me how to investigate.
He's telling you how to verify. That's different.
I'm talking to him. You can stay out of it.
No, she stays in it. This is her property.
Turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
For what? For standing on...
A routine patrol decision turned into a civil rights problem when a Marion County deputy pulled onto a construction site and assumed the black homeowners on the lot didn't belong there. The deputy demanded identification, insisted the situation was a criminal investigation, and refused to verify ownership through the simplest on-site source available. Minutes later, one homeowner sat in handcuffs on land he legally owned, while the documentation that cleared him was sitting within reach. By the time the deputy admitted he had the wrong people, the humiliation was already done, and the department eventually ended his employment over how he handled it. Tell me where you're watching from, city and state. And if you watch these stories because you're tired of seeing power abused and excuses used as cover, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now rewind. On June 29, 2025, Darius Vaughn and his wife, Imani Vaughn, drove out to Marion County to check on their newly built home. The build wasn't finished yet. Materials were still out. Construction was active, the kind of site where workers come and go, and where owners stop by all the time to look at progress. They parked near the lot and sat down to eat lunch on the property, nothing sneaky, no rushing around, no hiding. Just two people taking a break on land they owned. A patrol deputy, Travis Holloway, noticed a running vehicle in front of a new construction site and decided to pull in. He later leaned on theft concerns in the area as the reason he approached, and checking a site isn't the issue. The issue is how quickly he jumped to suspicion and how hard he clung to it once the homeowners told him the truth. Instead of starting with basic verification, the deputy treated the couple like they were already in the wrong. He demanded identification and framed the whole interaction like a criminal investigation. Darius and Imani told him they owned the property. That should have triggered the simplest next step: confirm ownership. On sites like this, the owner information is often posted right there because builders, inspectors, and subcontractors need it. In this case, the job box on the lot listed the owners. The deputy didn't check it. He didn't walk over, read the names, and clear the situation in seconds. Darius did what most people do when they realize an officer isn't listening. He stayed controlled and tried to keep the conversation anchored in facts. He provided his identification. He repeated the ownership point. He pushed back on the idea that he needed to prove he belonged on his own land. One important detail sat underneath the whole exchange. Darius wasn't only a homeowner, he was a veteran federal DEA agent. The deputy didn't know that at first, but that didn't excuse what happened, because rights aren't supposed to depend on job titles. Still, it mattered because Darius understood procedure better than most civilians ever will. He knew what a legitimate investigation looks like. He also knew what it looks like when an officer escalates because they don't like being challenged. Imani stood right there watching the tone sharpen. She kept insisting they owned the property and called out what it looked like from her side. Profiling first, questions second. She wasn't just defending a point. She was defending the basic dignity of being treated like a lawful person instead of a problem to be controlled. The deputy didn't pivot. He didn't verify. He kept pressing. That's where the story stops being about a suspicious vehicle and starts being about a decision-making failure. Verification was available. The deputy chose pressure. Once the deputy framed it as a criminal investigation, he stopped acting like he was trying to figure out what was true. He started acting like he needed someone to submit. Darius had already handed over identification. That should have been the off-ramp. A deputy who genuinely suspected trespassing could have done 3 quick things: glance at the job box, compare names, and walk away. Even if he didn't trust the job box, he could have called the builder, checked the permit paperwork tied to the address, or run the ID through dispatch and asked one direct question about property records. Basic steps. Fast steps. Deputy Holloway didn't take any of them. He kept the couple in place and kept pressing the same angle, as if repeating authority would replace evidence. He talked like the couple's explanations were excuses that needed to be tested, not information that needed to be verified. Darius and Imani kept telling him the same fact in different ways. They owned the land, they were allowed to be there, and nothing about eating lunch on your own property was a crime. The deputy's tone stayed aggressive, his posture stayed forward. He treated their calm pushback like resistance. That's a common pivot in these encounters. An officer demands compliance. A person answers with facts. The officer hears it as defiance. Then the officer starts using the word investigation like it's a free pass to do anything next. Darius didn't get loud. He didn't lunge into ego. He stayed precise because he understood something important. The more controlled he stayed, the harder it would be to justify escalation later. He also made it clear that the deputy was making a serious error and that there would be consequences if he continued down this path, not a threat, a warning about accountability. Imani didn't let the moment get reframed as two people being difficult. She stayed focused on the core issue. The deputy came in assuming they didn't belong, and he refused to check the obvious proof that they did. She called out profiling directly. She said it plainly, because that's what it looked like. At that point, the deputy had two choices. He could verify and leave, or he could keep leaning on power to avoid admitting he was wrong. He chose the second one. He kept insisting he wasn't leaving. He kept pushing for more compliance. He treated Darius's ID like it was just another item in a checklist, not the key that should have resolved the suspicion. Every minute that passed made the deputy's decision look worse, because the longer he stayed, the more it stopped being a check and started looking like a personal contest. Then the rain made it uglier. Bad weather doesn't create misconduct, but it exposes it. When someone keeps you outside in the rain, while they hold the authority to end the encounter, it sends a message. It's discomfort used as leverage. It's a way to remind you who controls the situation. Darius and Imani held their ground anyway. They kept repeating the same truth because they shouldn't have to invent new arguments to be treated like lawful homeowners. Darius had already given his name. His wife had already confirmed the ownership. The property was theirs whether the deputy liked it or not. The deputy still didn't verify. And with the rain coming down and the deputy committed to the criminal investigation story, the situation moved toward the moment that changed everything: detention. The deputy reached the point where he couldn't keep the same posture without escalating. He'd already committed to the idea that this was a criminal situation. He'd already treated their explanations like excuses. Backing off without winning would have meant admitting he had built the whole encounter on an assumption. So he tightened his grip on the moment. He detained Darius in the rain. Handcuffs went on, while Darius stood on his own property, with his wife watching it happen in real time. No theft was observed. No burglary tools, no attempt to flee. No evidence that the couple was lying, because the deputy still hadn't bothered to check the easiest proof source on the lot. That's what made it so hard to defend afterward. Detention isn't supposed to be a punishment for not sounding convincing. It's supposed to follow facts. Imani didn't stand there quietly while her husband got treated like a criminal. She protested immediately and kept the point sharp. They owned the land. They had said it repeatedly. And the deputy was acting on a bias-driven assumption instead of verification. She called it profiling to his face and made it clear she understood what she was seeing. Darius didn't melt down. He didn't beg. He didn't try to talk his way into being treated like a person. He stayed controlled and kept the focus on the core failure. The deputy had options to verify ownership and refused to use them. He told the deputy again that this was a serious mistake with consequences attached. That warning landed the way it usually lands in these situations. It didn't calm the deputy down. It irritated him. Some officers hear, "You're violating my rights," and treat it like an insult. They take it personally. They stop thinking about whether they're correct and start thinking about whether they're being challenged. The deputy doubled down. He kept talking like the handcuffs were justified because he had concerns and because he was investigating. He treated the couple's confidence as suspicious, like lawful owners aren't allowed to sound certain when they're standing on their own land. He stretched the situation to fit the decision he already made. Rain kept coming down while this happened. Darius stood cuffed and wet, while the deputy remained in control, not because the facts required it, but because the deputy refused to pause and verify. That's the moment where the whole power game flipped. Because once you put someone in cuffs, you better be able to explain why, clearly and fast. You better have something stronger than a vibe and a running vehicle. The deputy finally did what he should have done at the start. He checked the construction job box. It listed the owners. Both names were there, Darius Vaughn and Amani Vaughn. The deputy didn't find evidence of theft. He found proof of ownership that had been sitting on the lot the entire time. At that point, the deputy's whole stance collapsed. He had no reason to keep Darius detained. He had no lawful foundation left to stand on. He'd turned a quick verification into an unnecessary detention, and now the proof was in black and white. He removed the handcuffs and released Darius. Then he tried to explain it away with the same line about theft concerns in the area, like that erased the choices he made on the lot. The couple didn't accept that. They made the real issue clear. He didn't verify first. He escalated fast, and he treated them like criminals on their own property. An apology came after the damage, which is how it usually goes. The humiliation had already happened. The detention had already happened. The rain had already soaked through everything. You don't undo that with a few words after you finally read the job box. Darius and Amani left that lot with the truth confirmed, but also with something else. Proof that the system can flip on you, even when you're doing nothing wrong, even when you're the homeowner, even when the evidence is sitting right there. What happened on that lot didn't end when the cuffs came off. It couldn't. Not with a detention that never should have happened. Not with the proof sitting on site the whole time, and not with the deputy admitting he had nothing, only after he finally checked the job box. Darius and Imani treated it like what it was, an abuse of authority built on an assumption. They pushed for review. They made sure the incident didn't get filed away as a field interview or a misunderstanding. If oversight systems exist at all, this is the kind of situation they're supposed to catch. The department reviewed what the deputy did, and it wasn't hard to see the problem. The timeline mattered. He arrived, treated the couple like suspects immediately, demanded ID, refused to verify ownership when it was easy to do, escalated the tone, then detained Darius in the rain. Only after that did he check the job box and confirm the Vaughns were listed as the owners. That order of operations is the whole story. If the deputy had verified first, nothing else happens. No cuffs, no rain-soaked detention, no humiliation on private property. The review likely focused on that decision point, because it's where the deputy's discretion stopped looking like caution and started looking like control. His after-the-fact explanation about theft concerns didn't fix it. Departments hear that excuse all the time. Concerns in the area can justify checking a scene. It doesn't justify skipping basic verification and escalating anyway. The deputy didn't just approach, he chose to press. He chose to treat the homeowner's ownership claim as something to challenge instead of something to confirm. That's also why the couple's profiling complaint landed. Their position wasn't complicated. Two black homeowners said they owned the land. The deputy acted like that couldn't be true until he forced them through a confrontation. When he finally checked the site information, it was true the entire time. The fallout came down to accountability. After the incident was reviewed, Deputy Travis Holloway was fired from the Marion County Sheriff's Department. That ending didn't happen because he checked the lot. It happened because he delayed the check until after he used restraints. He escalated before he verified. He created the very problem he later tried to explain. For Darius and Imani, the firing didn't erase what happened. It didn't give them back the normal feeling they should have had on their own land. New builds already come with stress, money, timing, inspections, delays. They went out there to look at progress and eat lunch, and instead they got treated like they were trespassing on their own future. That kind of moment sticks. They also walked away with something that matters in situations like this. A clear example of why documentation and follow-through are the difference between nothing changes and someone is held responsible. Darius didn't need to scream. Imani didn't need to back down. They kept it factual, kept it consistent, and didn't let the department pretend it was normal. The bigger lesson wasn't only about one deputy, it was about a pattern that shows up everywhere. Too many encounters start with assumption, then the officer looks for facts that support it. That's backward. When law enforcement does it that way, regular people pay for it with fear, humiliation, and sometimes worse. If you're watching this and thinking, I would have handled it differently, ask yourself what you would have done while standing in the rain on your own property with someone insisting you're the problem. Would you comply and hope they calm down? Would you record and keep repeating the facts? Would you push the complaint afterward, even if people told you it wasn't worth it? Because that's the real divider. The moment is one thing. What you do after is what decides whether it becomes a pattern or a consequence. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me how you would have handled it. And if you want more stories where the power play doesn't get the last word, like subscribe and stay with the channel.
We're here to check on your girlfriend and that kid. Stop making this difficult.
That's my wife. Watch how you talk to her.
Then have your wife answer the questions.
You don't get to come onto my porch and call me that.
I'm not doing this back and forth with you. We're trying to check on a child.
You came to my house, disrespected my wife, and now you're looking in my windows without explaining anything.
This officer walked up thinking he was about to control a simple welfare check at a random house. But he had no idea he'd just stepped onto the wrong porch with the wrong attitude. The homeowner wasn't scared, wasn't confused, and wasn't about to get talked down to in front of his wife. What started as a routine knock turned into a recorded accountability moment the department couldn't ignore once it hit the internet. Now, before we rewind, tell me where you're watching from. Country, state, city, whatever. And if you watch stories where disrespect gets exposed and accountability actually lands, hit like and subscribe. All right, here's what was happening in real time. In May 2020, two officers, Rachel Bennett and Tyler Brooks, arrived at the California home of Sergeant Daniel Ellison, an Army veteran who was home with his wife, Lena. The call was supposed to be a welfare check connected to a hospital report that a child might have ingested nail polish remover. Serious on paper, urgent enough to move fast. The catch was simple and huge. They were at the wrong address. Daniel didn't know that. He didn't get the context. He just saw police on his property at his door, acting like he owed them answers, while they refused to start with a clear reason. Brooks led the contact, and he led it badly. Instead of introducing himself properly and explaining what they were doing there, he went straight into that impatient, commanding tone that assumes the person on the other side of the door is already guilty of something. Then he started referring to Lena with disrespectful labels, calling her Daniel's girlfriend and baby mama, instead of acknowledging she was his wife, and this was her home too. That wasn't a small detail. It set the whole interaction on fire. Daniel corrected him, not with theatrics, with a firm boundary. Brooks took the correction personally and raised his voice. The more Daniel pushed for clarity, the more Brooks treated it like defiance. Bennett stayed present but quiet at first. She watched Daniel, she watched Brooks. She looked like someone trying to figure out whether this was about to turn into a problem she'd have to clean up. Daniel kept demanding the basics. Who called, what was reported, why they were there, and what authority they thought they had to start probing around his home. He also made it clear he felt they were violating his rights, especially when the officer's behavior shifted from knocking to investigating without explanation. Then one of them looked through a window. Daniel's tone changed immediately. His anger jumped because from his point of view, they still hadn't justified anything, and now they were peering into his house like it was open for inspection. He accused them of crossing a line. Brooks didn't de-escalate. He escalated again, louder, more aggressive, and eventually vulgar. That's the power chess game right there. Daniel asked for clarity and respect. Brooks tried to win with pressure, volume, dismissive language, and provocation. The goal in moments like that is simple. Make the homeowner react emotionally so the officer can claim control. Daniel didn't give him that clean win. He stayed planted. He stayed verbal. He didn't rush at them. He didn't threaten them. He held his boundary and kept calling out what he saw. Bennett finally stepped in with a different approach. She slowed it down, started asking the questions Brooks should have asked first, and moved toward actually figuring out whether the call details matched this home at all. That shift is where everything starts to crack, because once Bennett focused on the facts instead of ego, the truth came out fast. And that's where part 2 begins. Bennett explains the real reason for the visit, the wrong address becomes undeniable, and Brooks has to deal with what he created on camera. Bennett finally cut into the chaos the only way that works in moments like this. She stopped feeding the argument and started running the call like a call. She asked for the details tied to the welfare check. She checked what was actually reported. She compared it to what she was seeing in front of her. Daniel kept talking, still angry, still firm. But now his energy had somewhere to land, because somebody on that porch was finally acting like a professional. Brooks didn't like losing control of the interaction. He kept trying to steer it back into a dominance contest. His tone stayed sharp. He acted like Daniel's questions were the issue, not his own behavior. He kept talking like the goal was to win the porch, not resolve the situation. Bennett didn't match that energy. She asked Daniel for basic info in a way that sounded like she actually wanted to verify, not accuse. She also started explaining piece by piece what they were responding to. A hospital had contacted police because there was concern a child may have swallowed nail polish remover. The call came in as urgent enough to justify a quick welfare check. Daniel's face didn't soften, but his frustration shifted. He wasn't arguing against a welfare check. He was arguing against how they showed up and how Brooks spoke to his wife and to him. He made that clear. He pointed out the labels Brooks used for Lena. He pointed out the raised voice. He pointed out the window look, while they still hadn't explained anything. And that window part mattered, because it's the kind of move that instantly makes people feel like the situation is turning into a search, not a check. From a legal angle, Bennett had cover. Officers can approach a home and knock. That's normal, and if they're responding to a possible medical emergency involving a child, a quick look through a window can get framed as checking for signs of distress. Courts often give leeway when officers reasonably think someone inside might need immediate help. But none of that made Brooks's conduct look any better on camera. Bennett kept working through the facts until the mismatch became obvious. The call wasn't matching this household. The address was wrong. The supposed child in danger wasn't here. Daniel wasn't relieved. He was vindicated. Because once the wrong address reality landed, it exposed the whole thing. Brooks hadn't been firm during an emergency. He'd been disrespectful at the wrong house to the wrong people, while refusing to explain why he was there. That's not command presence. That's ego with a badge. Bennett acknowledged the mistake and started pulling the interaction back toward closure. She clarified they weren't accusing Daniel or Lena of anything. She framed it as a misdirected welfare check. She tried to end it cleanly. Brooks still couldn't resist one last push. His tone carried that defensive edge officers get when they realize they've been recorded acting out and they can't undo it. He didn't apologize in a meaningful way. He didn't take responsibility. He just tried to exit without looking like he lost. Daniel didn't let him leave with the narrative. He stayed composed enough to deliver the point clearly. They came to the wrong home, disrespected his family, escalated for no reason, and then tried to justify it after the fact. He didn't need theatrics. The footage handled the rest. Bennett and Brooks left. The porch got quiet again, but the situation didn't end there. Daniel had a recording of officers showing up hostile, misidentifying his wife, raising their voices, peeking through a window, and only later admitting they were wrong. And Daniel did what more people started doing in 2020 when they felt boxed in by authority. He posted it. Once Daniel posted the footage, it stopped being a neighborhood moment and turned into a public one. People shared it for one reason. The escalation didn't match the call. Viewers could follow the pattern even without being told what to think. 2 officers showed up for a welfare check, didn't clearly explain themselves up front, and one of them talked to the homeowner like the homeowner was the problem for asking basic questions. Add the disrespect towards Lena and the window look, and it looked even worse. The comments split into the same lanes you always see, but the video kept winning because it was specific. Not rumors, not he said, she said. It showed the tone, the pacing, the choices. It showed Brooks turning a simple contact into a confrontation. And it showed Bennett trying, late but trying, to put the interaction back on rails. That difference mattered online. People didn't treat the officers as a single unit. They started comparing them. Brooks became the symbol of the problem. Not because he knocked on a door, but because he stacked mistake on top of mistake. He assumed authority meant he didn't need to explain. He used disrespectful labels for the homeowner's wife. He escalated when corrected. He got louder when challenged. He used vulgar language instead of professionalism. He kept pushing even after it became obvious the call details weren't lining up. Bennett didn't get a free pass, but she got a very different read. Viewers saw her shift into de-escalation mode. They saw her focus on the actual welfare check details. They saw her deliver the explanation that should have been delivered at the start. In a video where one officer kept trying to dominate, the other one looked like the person trying to end the situation without making it worse. That's how it spread. Not just outrage, but contrast. Then the department had to respond. At first, departments usually tried to sit on stuff like this. Quiet review, no comment. Hope the clip dies in the feed. This one didn't die. The backlash grew fast enough that silence started looking like agreement. So the department went public with an apology. Not a vague, "we regret the misunderstanding" type of statement. A real acknowledgement that the contact was handled poorly. They addressed the professionalism issue because the wrong address piece was bad, but the behavior on camera was the part people couldn't unsee. Behind the scenes, pressure hit from multiple directions at once. Community members called, people emailed, local media sniffed around. The footage became the kind of clip supervisors hate because it's simple to understand. No technical argument saves you when the attitude is the headline. Brooks felt that heat immediately. You could almost predict the internal conversations. Supervisors asking why he didn't explain the call sooner, why he talked to the residents that way, why he used vulgar language, why he escalated instead of controlling the tone, why he made the department look reckless over a welfare check at the wrong house. And Brooks didn't have a good answer that matched the video. That's the thing about recordings. They don't care about your "I felt threatened" vibe if your behavior shows you were trying to provoke the reaction. Bennett, on the other hand, looked like the person who tried to salvage it. That didn't mean she was perfect, but it gave the department something to point to. One officer attempted to de-escalate and clarify the purpose of the call. Daniel and Lena watched all of this play out from their side of the screen, and that comes with its own stress. Posting a video like that invites attention, support, yes. Also strangers in your business. Also people trying to nitpick your tone. Also the risk of retaliation if the department is the type to take things personally. But Daniel had the advantage of being steady and documented. The clip wasn't edited into something misleading. It showed the sequence clearly: confusion, disrespect, escalation, clarification, wrong address. As the story kept circulating, the department's options shrank. They could either discipline Brooks and admit the obvious, or keep him and signal to everyone that this is acceptable behavior during welfare checks. Public pressure makes those choices real. By the time the dust started settling, the department moved Brooks out. In cases like this, it often happens as a resignation allowed by leadership or a separation that avoids a long public fight. However it got framed internally, the outcome looked the same from the outside. Brooks didn't remain in that role after the backlash. Bennett didn't get that outcome. She stayed, and the public narrative around her was noticeably more favorable because she had tried to calm the situation and explain what was actually happening. Once the department apologized publicly, people tried to treat that as the ending. Daniel didn't. Lena didn't. An apology doesn't rewind the disrespect, and it doesn't erase the fact that two officers showed up to the wrong home and still managed to turn it into a confrontation. The bigger consequence wasn't just Brooks leaving. It was the lesson everyone could see without needing a legal degree. When officers skip the basic step of explaining themselves, they create the very danger they claim to be preventing. Daniel's footage became the reference point in local conversations for weeks. Not because it was flashy, but because it was clean evidence of a common pattern. A resident asked reasonable questions. An officer took it personally. The officer escalated. The second officer eventually did the job correctly, and the truth came out. The department's internal response mattered too, even if they didn't say every detail out loud. Brooks didn't stay on the department after the backlash. Whether they framed it as a resignation, a separation, or a mutual decision, the public saw the same outcome. He was gone. That happened because the video made it hard to defend him without defending the behavior. Departments can argue law. They struggle arguing tone when it's recorded. Bennett came out of it looking better, and that wasn't about people loving police. It was about people recognizing one officer tried to fix what the other one broke. She stepped in, clarified the call, and de-escalated instead of trying to dominate. She didn't prevent the bad start, but she stopped it from going further. Daniel and Lena didn't get something dramatic, like a trophy or a parade. Real life doesn't work like that. What they got was confirmation that recording mattered, and that standing firm without getting reckless can change outcomes. They also got something less visible, a shift in how they handled their own safety. After that day, they treated every unexpected knock differently. Phones charged, cameras ready, clear rolls. Lena watching details while Daniel handled the front. Not because they wanted conflict, but because they understood how fast a wrong assumption can become a problem when someone in uniform decides they're the main character. On the department side, the incident became a training example, whether they admitted it publicly or not. Welfare checks don't just require urgency. They require communication. The simplest way to keep control of a scene is to explain why you're there and what you need. When officers open with disrespect and vagueness, residents fill the gap with suspicion, and the interaction turns into a contest. That's what happened here. A welfare check about a child possibly ingesting nail polish remover should have taken minutes. Knock, explain, verify the address, move on. Instead, Brooks made it personal. He disrespected Lena. He raised his voice. He used vulgar language. He tried to pressure Daniel into either submitting or snapping. Bennett had to step in and do damage control. The call ended with the truth that should have been established first. Wrong address. So here's the takeaway, and it's not complicated. Professionalism isn't a bonus, it's the job. If an officer can't show basic respect during a routine contact, that officer becomes the risk factor. Now I want to hear from you. If police showed up at your house and wouldn't explain why they were there, what would you do? Would you step outside, keep the door closed, start recording, ask for a supervisor? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more story times like this, realistic situations, clear accountability, and people refusing to be bullied, make sure you subscribe and keep notifications on. Because the next one is just as wild.